The Sunday dinner had began normally enough. My two children, Maya and James, sat beside me at the huge mahogany table in my parents' house. The same table where 3 generations have congregated for decades. The extended family crowded the dining room as usual. 14 people crowded around the table with its white linen tablecloth and proper place settings. Aunts and uncles occupied the chairs closest to my parents. Cousins spread throughout in order of age and perceived value. My sister Jessica sat immediately across from me, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her wine glass, a habit she adopted whenever she felt superior about something. The crystal chandelier overhead provided warm light throughout the setting, illuminating the costly china that Mother insisted on using, even for family gatherings. Everything had to represent success, even when that success was predicated on secrets and carefully managed appearances. Maya, my 7-year-old, had dropped her fork while reaching for her water glass. It clattered against the porcelain dish, the sound harsh amid a small lull in conversation. A tiny accident, scarcely apparent above the typical dinner talk, but Mother's head shot toward us like a predator who had just spotted prey, her eyes narrowing with that familiar expression of disdain I'd come to know so well. "Can't you control them?" she asked, her voice breaking over the dinner discussion. I picked up the fork and handed it back to Maya. "It was an accident. Everything with your children is an accident," Jessica continued, rolling her eyes. "Last week they were sprinting in the hallway. The week prior laughed too loudly during Mother's book club. Uncle Thomas chuckled from the end of the table. Kids will be kids, but there are limitations." My father remained silent, concentrated intensely on chopping his roast beef. I noticed his jaw tightening, but he said nothing. "I've been patient," Mother continued, placing down her silverware with precise precision, "but my kindness has limitations. You've been living here for 3 years now." Rentry, the word hung in the air. Several relatives exchanged looks. "I think it's time we discussed your contribution to this household," she said. $2,000 a month looks acceptable, or perhaps you want to find your own place." Aunt Patricia nodded approvingly. "Very fair, Margaret, very fair indeed." Jessica smiled. "Maybe it'll teach responsibility. Some of you didn't need to move back home in our 30s. I took a slow breath observing my children. James, only 5, had quit eating totally. He looked up at me with troubled eyes. Maya's little hand found mine under the table. "The children are too noisy anyway," Mother added. "They destroy my peace. Pay up or go out." Around the table, heads nodded. Uncle Thomas, Aunt Patricia, Jessica, even Cousin David, who rarely spoke. A united front of family agreement that I had overstayed my welcome, that I was a burden, that my children were a bother. My father's knuckles were white around his knife and fork, so he said nothing. I reached for my phone and accessed my banking app. The relatives began mumbling, already wondering how much rent I should pay, whether $2,000 was enough, whether I could even afford it. "Interesting time to tell who pays your mortgage," I stated quietly. The talk paused. Mother's confident smile faltered, then disappeared totally. "What did you say?" she inquired. My father's voice was barely a whisper. "Don't." But I was done being quiet, done being treated like a charity case in front of my children, done watching them learn that family meant humiliation and conditional affection. I turned my phone screen toward Mother. I said, "Interesting time to discuss rent considering I've been paying your mortgage for the last 4 years. The hush was absolute. Jessica leaned forward. "That's ridiculous." "Why would you?" "Because Dad begged me to," I interrupted, staring at my father. His face had gone pale, and he had placed down his silverware with quivering hands. 4 years ago in October, when the business failed, when the commercial clients all dropped out within the same month, when you reorganized the house to cover outstanding obligations and wages, trying to keep everyone working till the end. When you were 3 months from foreclosure and the bank was delivering final notices, I could still remember that phone call, Dad's voice breaking as he recounted the situation, how all he'd created over 30 years had collapsed in less than 6 months. How Mother didn't realize the full amount of the financial damage, how he needed aid but couldn't stand to ask anyone else in the family. Mother's hand trembled slightly when she reached for her water glass, nearly knocking it over. "That's we never what, never told anyone." I scrolled through my banking history. $12,400 every single month for 48 months. That's $595,200 I've paid to keep this roof over your heads. Aunt Patricia's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "You're lying," Jessica responded, but her voice lacked conviction. I walked around the table and placed my phone in front of Mother. transaction after transaction, all labeled the same way. Property payment, 123 Burwood Lane, her address. Uncle Thomas cleared his throat. Margaret, is this true? Mother couldn't seem to form words. She glanced at the screen, her finger sliding slowly over the unending list of payments. We were going to notify everyone. My father finally uttered his voice hoarse once we were back on our feet. Once the business recovered, it's been 4 years. I said the business didn't recover. You sold it 2 years ago. I know because you called me crying about it, Dad, and I told you not to worry about the house payments, that I had it handled. Jessica's face had lost all its smugness, replaced by dawning fear as she comprehended the implications. But how could you afford? You stated you were struggling. You mentioned that's why you moved back home. You let me believe you needed aid, that you were barely making ends meet. I moved back because Dad asked me to. I stated, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. 3 years ago, just after Mom's operation, the difficulties, the extended recuperation period, he thought she needed family around during those difficult months. Thought the kids would cheer her up, give her something positive to focus on while she healed. I had a perfectly excellent apartment across town, 2 bedrooms close to the kids' school, a neighborhood where they had friends. We were happy there. The memories of that place felt distant now, like a life I'd lived in another world. A place where my children could be noisy and messy and joyful without constantly being informed they were inconvenient. I returned to my seat and put an arm around James, who had started crying silently. Maya squeezed my hand closer. I gave up my apartment, put my children into a house where they'd be scrutinized for every sound they made, every moment of childhood bliss, because family needed me. Mother finally found her voice. We didn't know you were. We assumed your father's consulting work was covering the mortgage. My consulting business covers groceries, Dad admitted meekly. Barely. The mortgage, the property taxes, the insurance, that's all her has been for years. Cousin David pushed back from the table. I need some air, sit down. Aunt Patricia snapped at him, then turned to me. Why didn't you say something? Why let us assume you were freeloading? Because Dad requested me not to, I said simply. Because he was embarrassed that the family firm his father began 60 years ago had crumbled under his watch. Because he didn't want anyone to realize how terribly things had failed, how near you all were to losing this place. This emblem of family success and stability. Because he thought family is supposed to help each other quietly without making a production of it, without demanding acknowledgement or thanks. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd kept quiet to protect his pride, and in doing so had allowed my children and myself to become targets for the family's judgment and condemnation. I looked around the table at each face, soaking in their reactions. The smugness had fled completely, replaced by varied mixes of shock, shame, embarrassment, and in some cases a rising fury at being kept in the dark about something so fundamental. Uncle Thomas looked deceived. Aunt Patricia felt unable to digest the information. Cousin David had his head in his hands. But I'm done being quiet when my children are insulted in the house I pay for, I continued, done being treated like a burden when I'm the only reason there's still a family house to congregate in. Jessica's wine glass sat forgot. All those times I commented about you not contributing. Mother, did you know? I thought. Mother's voice was unsteady now. I thought we were managing. Your father insisted he had it under control. He did have it under control, I responded, meeting my father's eyes across the table. Because he begged me for aid and I offered it. No questions asked, no strings attached, no expectations for thanks or acknowledgement. Just help, quiet and consistent, because that's what I felt family does. That's what I was raised to believe family means. My father's eyes were watery now. Tears he was too proud to let fall in front of everyone. Uncle Thomas stood abruptly, his chair scrapping against the hardwood floor. This is certainly a revelation, Margaret. Edward, I think perhaps we should allow you some privacy to sort things out. No, Mother responded firmly, her voice cracking slightly. Everyone stays. They all heard me insult my kid at this table. They all nodded along when I demanded she pay rent or leave. They can all sit here and hear the truth about who's truly been helping this family. She turned to me, and for the first time in 3 years I saw true emotion in her eyes. Not the chilly disappointment I'd gotten accustomed to, but something roar him perhaps. Or regret. I didn't know, she said. I promise I didn't know. Would it have mattered? I asked. If you'd known I was paying the mortgage, would you have treated my children differently? Treated me differently? She couldn't answer. My father cleared his throat. I should have told her, told everyone, but I was ashamed. The business my father founded, the one I ran into the ground, the house almost lost, having to ask my daughter to save us. I couldn't face it. So instead, you let me face it, I said. Let me and my kids be the family charity case. While I silently kept everyone housed, Aunt Patricia placed down her napkin. Margaret, I think I owe your daughter an apology. We all do. An apology doesn't change the financial account, Jessica said, then checked herself. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my phone buzzed. A text message from my bank, the monthly automatic payment had processed. $12,400 removed right on schedule. I showed the notification to Mother. That's this month's mortgage. Due on the 15th, paid on the 10th, same like usual, just like the prior 48 months. She closed her eyes. I'm so sorry, are you? I asked. Sorry I paid the mortgage or sorry everyone found out. Both, she admitted, and sorry that I made you feel unwelcome in a house you're keeping from foreclosure. Sorry I chastised your gorgeous youngsters who did nothing wrong but be children. Sorry I've been so blind. James tugged at my sleeve. Can we go now, Mom? I stared at my son's tear-streaked face, at Ma's perplexed gaze, at the table full of relatives who suddenly regarded me quite differently. Yes, sweetheart, I said, we can go. I up and helped my children from their chairs around the table. No one moved to stop us. Wait, my father said, please let's talk about this, we can speak, I agreed. Tomorrow when the kids aren't here to watch their family implode. Mother reached out as I passed her chair, her hand gripped mine. I was cruel, unforgivably cruel. Please don't take the children away. You demanded I pay rent or go, I reminded her softly. So, I'm leaving. I'll keep paying the mortgage because I promised Dad I would and I keep my vows, but my children and I will find somewhere they can giggle without condemnation, somewhere they can drop a fork without judgment. Jessica stood. I'll help you pack, it's the least I can do. No need, I said. I've been looking at flats for 2 months now. Since the last time Maya was scolded for singing, I have a place lined up. We can move in next weekend. Uncle Thomas spoke up. If you need help moving, I have a truck. Thank you, I said. I'll let you know. I guided my children toward the door. Behind us, the dinner table sat in tatters. Food growing cold, wine ignored. A family faced truths they'd successfully ignored for years. At the threshold, I hesitated and turned around. For what it's worth, I never desired attention, never wanted gratitude. I just wanted my children to feel welcome in their grandparents' home. That's all I ever wanted. Mother was crying now, gently. Her exquisite serenity eventually snapped. We left them there, my children and I, strolling out to my car in the chilly evening air. Maya climbed into her booster seat, James into his. I belted them both in and kissed their foreheads. Are we in trouble? James asked. No, baby, I assured him. We're not in jeopardy, we're going to be perfectly fine. And for the first time in 3 years, I believed it. My phone rang before I could start the car. My father's number. I let it go to voicemail, then Mother's number, likewise voicemail, then Jessica's. I silenced the phone and drove home through the quiet neighborhoods. My youngsters already started to relax in the back seat, their earlier anxiety receding. The mortgage payment would clear tomorrow. The family home would remain protected for another month. And my children would learn that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away from people who don't value you. Even when those individuals are family, especially when those people are family, because real family doesn't demand rent from the one keeping them housed. Real family doesn't chastise children for being children. Real family doesn't confuse silence for weakness or humility for reliance. And my children deserve to learn what true family looked like.